everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Dayton Drama Queens. I'm Josh Stucky.
I'm Philip Drennen.
And we have so much to talk about today. We have Joe Deere here. Everybody knows Joe Deere. He's a legend in the Dayton area for all he's done for the arts. And there's so much going on in our city right now. So it's going to be kind of nice to talk to somebody who's seen it all from the beginning up till now. And it's exciting. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
I think most people probably know you from Wright State. So let's start there. What was your history with Wright State? How did that all get started?
Well, I was there for 27 years, and I just retired from teaching, from full-time teaching.
Yes, congratulations.
Last spring. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
And so I'm calling that the middle chapter of my life.
Okay.
Because I had this whole career prior to that as just exclusively in professional theater, and now I'm into this next thing. But Wright State was, at the time that I started there, they were planning a musical theater program, a BFA Musical Theatre, like a lot of schools around the country at that time. Sure. And they sought a person who had professional background and was, academically credentialed and all that stuff. And I happened to be the right person at the right time. I was teaching down in Texas at University of North Texas at the time, and for me, that was not really a place that I thought had a bright future for what I wanted to do, even though Texas, Dallas area is a great area.
Yeah.
But I came to Wright State for an interview, and I met Stuart McDowell, he's truly a legendary guy. I met Stu for breakfast, and by the time I was done with breakfast, I was like, man, if this place wants me, I want them.
Wow, that's great.
And then I walked into the building in I guess it was called the Creative Arts Center then also, but that was before the big renovation. And there was so much energy in the hallway, and the kids were like, I remember, this is perhaps my enhanced memory, but it felt like kids were just crossing back and forth. It felt like Times Square with so much wonderful energy. And some kid going by in an Elizabethan doublet, and another kid coming by on their way to a tap class and stuff. And I thought, oh my God, I love the energy of this place. Well, anyway, it worked out. They brought me in to be the first head of the musical theater program, and I was in that position for a little more than 20 years before I became department chair and artistic director at a certain point. And I'm so proud of what we did, and I'm proud of what continues to happen there.
Unbelievable.
We've got so many wonderful grads out there doing fantastic things, both, I'll call it like highly visible people like Nicole Scherzinger, who's doing Sunset Boulevard. She was just named one of Time Magazine's 100 most fancy people.
She's won some awards already.
Yeah. She won the Olivier Award.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. I'm like, Coconut Girl gets that Tony.
Absolutely.
Have you seen it yet?
No.
I did, yes.
Pretty cool, right?
Oh my gosh. It's been forever since I've seen a standing ovation mid-show, and it was
earned, right?
It was earned. It really was.
So there's people like Nicole and lots of other people working at a very high level. But then I have a lot of people behind the scenes as producers and as company managers and as writers and as teachers. And then I have a whole slew of people who are simply making fantastic lives for themselves. I just had the pleasure of seeing the Full Monty, and there on stage was one of my former students, Robin Shank. And a person who is still a great person, right? And then a person who's a current student, and then so I just love seeing the lives that these people develop as they go forward. When you're 15, you think you know where you're going to end up, right? You've got a very clear idea, but then life happens, and if you're lucky and have opportunities, it will lead you in wonderful directions you never anticipated. And, for me, the journey is so much more important than whatever you think the destination is. Not to get all,
no, but it's true.
Platitude-y. And also the experience of the day is the adventure. That really is the adventure.
Got it.
People, a bunch of people said, what are you going to do now that you're retired? I'm like, dude, I have no intention of retiring. I'm just pivoting. So I have had this really great fortune of being in Italy for 2 summers, the last summer and the summer before. Wish I was going this summer, but it's not going to happen. But they said, what are you going to do? And I said, La Ventura, the adventure. That's what I'm going to do. And to me, that's the great pleasure. If you're lucky, if you have the opportunities and the privilege and the circumstances and talent and all those things, because it's a cocktail, right?
Yeah, it is.
but so for me, it's about the adventure of the day, of the project, right? And so I'm very comfortable believing that I'll never be in the New York Times again, and I'm all right with that.
That's
so
okay.
if I can stop chasing fame,
Right.
maybe I can be more focused on what's the great adventure of the day, like talking with you guys.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
feeds your soul?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, as you say that, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, I knew of you when I was kind of in my formative years. We've talked about that. And some of the shows that I saw that you had directed at Wright State really kind of changed my life. I mean,
Oh my God.
No,
you're
I'm
so
truly,
kind.
I was sitting there being like, theater can be this.
What did you see? What productions?
Parade.
Oh my God, I loved that. That was for me
That
a
actually
real
changed my life.
changer. Oh, you're so kind to
No,
say
truly,
that.
because I was like, well, first, I don't know that I had seen a musical that made me feel that way before.
Well, it's a very serious musical.
It is.
That is as Hal Princey a musical as you're ever going to encounter.
Yeah.
And even though he didn't write it, he definitely guided Alfred Urey and Jason Robert Brown, who was very young at the time.
Yeah.
He guided them in a way to make the kind of serious musical. I mean, this is the guy who did Evita and all those early Sondheim or middle career Sondheim musicals. I mean, and so his sensibility is imprinted on it. And I'll say there's no director that had more of an influence on me than Hal Prince.
Okay.
So my wife Caitlin Larson is also an actress. Well, she's a triple threat, and when we lived in New York, she did lots and lots of things, and I did too. I had a good time there. But she did Cabaret. She did the first revival of Cabaret that Hal Prince directed, and Joel Grey came back and played the MC.
How cool!
And
It's got some goosebumps.
oh my God, it was incredible. And so out of that process, I had this little teeny connection to Hal Prince. So when I finished my dance career, I knew that I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue being a chorus boy? And I loved the stuff that I did. I did Anything Goes on Broadway, and I did a bunch of stuff with New York City Opera. And I was in a spectacular company called the American Dance Machine that was called a living archive of Broadway theater dance.
Wow.
It was the best.
Yeah.
Hard work. I mean, I never danced as hard in my life, but it was the woman who was the artistic director is called Lee Theodore, and she was the original Anybody's and West Side Story. The tomboy they called them then. But she was the artistic director, and she kicked our asses, and she was a crazy person. But it was one of the most artistically fulfilling things I ever did.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I decided that I was really more interested in pursuing directing, I had some opportunities to do both, and at a certain point, you if you're going to play at a high level as a dancer, it's the Olympics. I mean, you really have to be in that kind of Olympic shape to do it, and I couldn't do both. So I said I'm going to pursue directing. Anyway, so I reached out to. I'm like, pretty unfazed, and I wrote a letter to Hal Prince's office and said, I would like to assist you.
Yes.
And his assistant wrote me back, didn't call, but wrote back and said, Mr. Prince doesn't need an assistant right now. Or I think actually Hal signed it. He said, I have an assistant I've worked with, a woman called Ruth Mitchell. Who I've worked with for a very long time. But if you'd like to come have a meeting, I'd be happy to set it up, contact my assistant. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to go meet Hal Prince. So
that is amazing.
Damn it is. And so I reached out and I go in for this meeting, and his office is in Rockefeller Center. And he's in the old offices that the legendary George Abbott was in.
Oh my God.
And so I go into this office and it's like, it's pretty empty. It's Hal and his assistant, and then a bunch of empty offices down the hallway. But you could see, like, this was where, like, Hal Prince was when he did Follies and when he did Company, and when he was a little grunt assistant to the assistant stage manager doing Damn Yankees and all that stuff when he started being a producer as a young Turk. Anyway, I go and I met him, and he looked at my resume. He said, well, you've done too much to be a production assistant for me, because I had already been a stage manager on Broadway and stuff. He said, but if you're doing anything in the city, let me know and I will come and see it. It was very welcoming. I'm not usually starstruck, but I was just kind of
Oh, how could you not?
Beside myself.
Yeah. Seal of approval, just the idea that you're,
well, it was
you to do this.
Well, he was actually that's true. He didn't dismiss it
exactly.
as, and that's actually a lot for somebody to say you can do this.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I had a lot of people along the way who were affirmative that way, including in Dayton. People, I mentioned Stuart, who was always, his first answer is yes. Mm-hmm. And then other people would say no. Mm-hmm. But he didn't usually take no for an answer, which I really admire. He's still a great friend.
It's funny when you were saying that at the beginning about Wright State, because I've told Philip this, many people this. When I went and looked at colleges, it was the Creative Arts Center that sold me on Wright State.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There was an energy in that building that I still to this day cannot explain. But
isn't that something? And you went for education.
I went for education.
Right? Yeah.
I went through there with my dad, and I was like, these are my people, Dad. These guys in these like leg warmers and these.
Oh yeah, sure.
I was like, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
That's like, that's not why you choose a college. I'm like, that's why I'm choosing this one. But there was something. But what was your life before Wright State?
Well,
how did this all get going for you?
Okay, so I mostly grew up in Tampa, Florida. My parents were university professors, and which is why I said I'll never do that.
Right. Yes.
See how that works?
Yes, I do.
But I pretty much grew up in Tampa, Florida, and my parents were college professors, and they were very supportive of whatever we were interested in. Mm-hmm. And they taught English, but really they taught a lot of pop culture when that was an emerging area of study.
Sure.
They were right on the front edge of it. In fact, they wrote the first major textbook on pop culture that was ever done. Yeah.
Really?
It was a big deal. It's called The Popular Arts.
So were they professors in Tampa?
At the University of South Florida.
Okay.
A campus that looks insanely like Wright State's campus.
Interesting.
When I came on the Wright State campus, I went, oh, this is a little odd. It's a little creepy, because it's the same kind of brick, same architectural period and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But anyway, I always liked theater, and I liked to go see shows, and it was dazzling and kind of wonderful. I used to watch, this is the days before cable TV.
Okay.
We had 4 channels, you've heard about this. And I would watch the afternoon movie, I would watch the morning movie, I would watch the late show, the late show, all these old shows, all these old movies. And that's where I would see Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and, Shirley Temple and Bill Robinson and Dan Daly and all these like MGM movies and RKO movies. And the Fred Astaire films absolutely amazed me. When I was a little boy, I took a bed sheet and sewed a tailcoat for myself out of a bed sheet because I'm like, I have to have a tailcoat so I can be like Fred Astaire. And so
I'm sewing a skirt for myself to spin around.
You're Ginger, I'm Fred. It all works,
It's hilarious. I love that.
But I was, after dancing around in the front yard at night when I would take my dog out to go and do his business, I would be like dancing on the sidewalk and in the street because it's like the movies, right? And my parents finally said, okay, you want to dance, we'll get you dance classes. And they had a friend who taught at the university, but his wife was a former vaudevillian. Oh my God. And had been in these old shows in the 19-teens and 20s, because this is in the 1970s, right?
Right.
So she was a very old lady, but that's a bridge, right? I mean, an incredible bridge. Mm-hmm. And so she took me and my brother and sister and a bunch of other people on her back porch, her screened in, not air conditioned in Florida, back porch, and we were tap dancing in our sneakers back there. She had such bad arthritis, she couldn't stand, but she would teach us from her chair, and we learned all these old things from shows she did, like Hit the Deck and Connecticut Yankee. I mean, like crazy. And I made my debut as a dancer on stage wearing a big plastic trash can with my legs sticking out, like a dancing pack of cigarettes or something. I guess she figured that would reduce the obligation to have stage presence.
Right.
But anyway, and at a certain point she said, I've taught you as much as I can teach you. And she got us to a guy called Bobby Carl and his wife Sandy Carl, and they became my show business parents, right? I had my parents, and then I had my show business parents, and he was a Broadway dancer, like he did so many shows on Broadway. Lil Abner. He was in the movie. He was a chimney sweep in Mary Poppins. Wow. He was in
How fortunate for that.
Oh
It's
my
just
God,
unbelievable. Yeah.
They were so great and exactly what I needed.
Yes.
Once I saw that kind of dance, I realized that's what I have to do, because I was like, that's acting through dance.
Right.
And so anyway, I did that all through my teen years, and it really gave me a sense of an anchor and an identity, and such a welcoming community of people, almost all of whom were older than me, and I learned to be around adults. They were fantastic. I mean, some of those people are still friends to this day. Wow. And although Bobby Carl, my mentor, he passed away a few years ago. His wife is still alive. I'm still in touch with her. Love her. They changed my life.
Yeah.
And put me on a course. Once I got there, it's like people can describe chicken, but until you've tasted chicken, you don't know what it is, right? And once I got with them, I'm like, I have tasted chicken. I know what this is. And then I decided I wanted to be great at it. And I went to college, got done in 2.5 years, got a degree in acting at University of South Florida. Good people there, and they let me do everything I wanted to do. It was really a playground. Really a playground. And I went to New York and I hit the ground hard, and eventually I did that. So I was there for about 12 years. And the last show I did was Guys and Dolls on Broadway with Faith Prince and Nathan Lane and Peter Gallagher.
At you right now. That's amazing.
Well, and that was really one of the, it is one of the most celebrated revivals. People, because, I'm like on all these Facebook groups for, show queens, right? And it is one of the most talked about shows. People still go, oh, I saw it. And it was remarkable. So I did that. And I realized, I think I've learned as much as I'm going to learn about being a director by being a stage manager, right? I kind of have learned that. So now I want to go, I want to get real training in it. And I went to Carnegie Mellon got an MFA in directing at Carnegie Mellon, not really knowing what would happen next, but my wife and I both felt like it's nice to be around green things and have a yard around us and stuff in Pittsburgh, right? Which is a lot like Dayton. We knew we wanted to start a family, and I just thought, I don't think I want to go back to New York and start again. I mean, after 12 years there and then 3 more years of graduate school, I continued directing professionally all through grad school. I was artistic director of a theater up in Northwest Pennsylvania called Struthers Library Theater. That was a fantastic theater. And then eventually I thought I really like teaching, because I had to teach as part of grad school, right? And so I discovered I had always taught tap and some other theater dance in New York. And in fact, there's a studio called Steps in New York. I was the first tap teacher at Steps. I talked them into offering tap. They said, gee, do you think people would want to come? I'm like, yeah, because there's that show 42nd Street down the street, and My One and Only and Sophisticated Ladies. I'm like, there are people who want to tap dance. Well, who would teach it?
Hands up.
Me.
Yes, I got it.
I can teach it. So I was the first tap teacher at Steps, and of course it's grown in. That's anyway. But so I liked teaching, and so it was kind of a natural leap forward, and I'm lucky. I ended up at Wright State, which was, at the time I got there, it was really growing, and there were many people who wanted to say yes to excellence, and they could devote resources to it. And I'm sure I had sharp elbows and poked some people the wrong way, but I was ambitious for this program. I made a mandate for myself. I said, I want to create. Well, they said, we want you to create a national level program. I said, got it. And I said, my job is to prepare these young people to begin professional careers. Yes. I can't make them stars. There are schools who say, oh, come here and you'll be a star. I went to Carnegie Mellon for grad school, and I saw the undergrads, and there was a lot of pressure. And some of the people I went to school with became fancy people. Christian Borle and Patrick Wilson and all sorts of other people went through there while I was there, and they went on to become very, very famous and fantastic and successful. So I know what that's all about, but I thought I can't try to guarantee that's going to happen. Right. Instead, I just want to train them really well and get them so that they have developed their craft, develop their artistry, understand the business that they're going into, and help them cultivate a love of the art form that they're in.
And you've done it.
Well, thank
you've done it, you know?
Well,
and that's the fortunate thing for those people they got to go through Wright State University.
I loved it, and I'm so close with lots of them, and but it's always the door is always revolving, and some people you get on the carousel, you get off the carousel.
True.
Well, and to get a closer peek into your brain, you've written a book on directing as well.
I wrote a book on directing, and I wrote a book on acting. The two books I have are acting in musical theater and directing in musical theater.
Okay.
And the acting one has been translated now into 5 languages, and the directing one is in Italian and in English. Isn't that the coolest?
That's really cool.
And I'm in the middle right now of revising the directing book, and it's just so great. So and that's all just me saying, I want to figure out for myself. Well, with the acting book, I said, there's no really good book out here on this subject. So I'm going to write the book I wish I had when I started. And I worked with my dear friend Rocco Dalvera, who was on faculty down at CCM, who you know, or you knew, right? We collaborated on that and wrote acting in musical theater. And then the directing book I wrote by myself. And it's really saying, I've done this pretty successfully, and I've worked with some great directors. How do I articulate what this process is, right? So anyway, that's and here we are
in a nutshell.
25, right? There's my life.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Joe is here in Dayton, Ohio. After all of this,
aren't I the luckiest guy in the world?
Well, listen, we're lucky that you're here with us.
Thank you.
Fortunate for what you've given to our community. It's been incredible. I just want to real quickly say thank you so much to Square One, our major sponsor.
Yes, thank you.
For all they do. And Joe, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
What a life lived, and you've got so much more to go.
I have a lot more to go.
You do.
And with the many wonderful organizations that Dayton
tons
holds.
of them. Yeah, there are.
So thank you so much.
I was going to say, I think we're going to need a Joe Deere part 2.
Part 2, Joe Deere.
I'll be happy to come back.
I would love it if you bring your wife.
Oh, that would be good.
That would be amazing.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. She'll be like, shut up, let me get a word.
Well, get ready for the sequel, everybody.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you for being here again. And like we keep saying to you, we're growing because of you, and we appreciate it so much. Joe Deere, Phil Drennen, Josh Stucky, we're signing off. Thank you to Tyler at Mitosis.
Thank you. Bye.